Welcome back to the San Diego Opera Podcast. I'm Nick Ravellis. My guest today is Baritone Paul La Rosa. Paul, welcome.
Hello, sir. How's it
Good
going?
to have you in San Diego.
Good to be here.
First time?
No, I was here very briefly 2 years ago when we did El Pasado.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. I didn't meet anybody in El Pasado.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's,
so first time.
that's why. Yeah,
Right.
okay, terrific. So you're, in a sense, the other half of the cast.
Yeah.
There's Maria, and you do everybody else?
Well, at
would
least
that be a way of
all of
putting
the all
it?
of the male singing roles? Yes.
Okay, let's step back just a little bit. First of all, your typical role, what you do in opera, would usually be what?
So I mean, I would sing. I'm like a full lyric, moving into dramatic territory, baritone. So a lot of the Puccini roles and like Jack Rance is something I did like fairly recently, and things like Giovanni. And, yeah, your traditional bel canto Italian opera roles and Verdi.
So some Donizetti, I would imagine some Mozart as
Yeah.
well. So how different is Maria de Buenos Aires and what you have to do in this piece from the standard rep?
Right. So in terms of dramatic thrust, not actually all that different, right? Because I mean, it's a very dramatic, passionate show for all of the people involved. And I mean, in terms of vocal production,
Right.
I mean, try to sing well all of the time. There's, of course, being able to, we're being mic'd in this show, and being able to stylistically work well with this particular band as opposed to a full orchestra. I mean, yeah, so there's going to be some differences, but I think about them less as technical vocal differences and more as color choices.
Right.
So vocally, I'm not really thinking about it in a different way than I would normally think. Just being sensitive to the particularities of this theater, the way it's being mic'd, and the band. Yeah.
But it is stylistically different.
100%.
From anything else that you do. Do you have to approach it in any different way? I mean, obviously, vocal production is your healthy vocal production is your healthy vocal production,
right.
and you're going to carry it everywhere you go. But are there any slight differences in how you approach this music as opposed to something in the standard rep?
So yeah, I mean, I'm singing this clearly differently than I would sing Germont, but I'm not. But I would sing French chanson very different than I would sing Germont as well. So
Right.
so it's. I think each piece has its particular style and it belongs to a particular time, and learning those subtleties and those nuances and bringing the vocal technique and my sense of artistry to bear on this or that particular piece. I think it's it's all the same kind of problem piece to piece.
It's the same
like
challenge.
I'm approaching it the exact same way I would approach anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
So the tango inflection, the rhythms,
Yeah.
you just go with it, but you carry
into
with it,
Right.
your
And
voice with it.
Otherwise, you're doing a caricature of somebody that you're not, right?
Right.
So yeah, I've tried to familiarize myself as much as possible with the rest of Piazzolla's music and other sorts of tango.
Well, and that was my next question.
Yeah.
Had you ever had any experience with Piazzolla before?
No, actually, I was. I almost did this show from like 2010 or 2011, but I was. I couldn't get a release for it, and so I mean, like I've known about it since then, and I've listened to some music here and there. But when the offer came in, I was very excited, and I listened to like a whole bunch of tango music. I went to see some tango music in Queens actually not too long ago to be able to get like more of a feel of it, like in a live setting, it's gorgeous, beautiful music, and at least primarily that's what I connected to.
Right.
Before I even knew sort of what the story was about. And, yeah.
It's gorgeous music.
Yeah,
and the
it's gorgeous.
tunes are wonderful. And they just pile up, don't they? This is one after another after another. I hadn't noticed that before because I've been familiar with the piece through a recording for about 10 or 12 years myself, and was just thrilled that we were going to do it. But I didn't realize how many distinct tunes were peeling off just within like the first 5-10 minutes of the show.
Yeah.
It's really pretty amazing. So your role exactly now. How do you place yourself within the story and within the context of Maria's story?
Right. So show to show, I think it's very different, depending on how the director conceives it. Because the payador can be anywhere from 1 to, I think, 6 probably separate characters. We're playing the show, which I think is, if you're doing it in a staged operatic production, you need to have him as, or maybe not need to, but I think it's a good way to be able to solve the problem, to have him as one character throughout.
And the name was El Payador.
So
And
the
which
payador
means-
is not the it's a kind of a musician, the same way if you would say like the troubadour or something like that.
Okay.
So which is not the payador as a historical figure is not all that different. I mean, he was a traveling musician who would go around to different areas and sing payadas, which is a form of music, like a milonga that like ended up developing into the tango, or the tango developed out of. And they would have sort of like breakdance fighting, but the vocal version of that, right? It was like one payador would sing insulting verse to another payador, and he would sing something back, and you would express your virtuosity, that way. So that's the title of the character, but only one of the actual pieces. I think it's the first one. The ballada is actually indicated as the payador. The rest of it is either the character called Gorrión, which means sparrow, or the voice of Sunday, or the first analyst, or all this sort of things.
Right.
So you can play them each as different characters, but it doesn't give. I think that works better maybe in a sort of a concert version, or more of a sort of the singer is coming out and singing slightly different characters while tango is being watched, and you watch the band, which is an excellent way of showing the show too. But if you're going to present it as a consistent narrative, I think it's good for the payador and all the other characters as well to have a narrative arc that they're able to play throughout, which is in there and can be developed, and John did an excellent job finding.
And I'll be talking to John. This is John Los Santos, who's the stage director of Maria. We'll be talking to him soon. And it would seem to me this is one of the problems with the piece, that the language is it's surrealistic poetry. It's coming from here and there, and there is a thread, that being the birth and life, death of Maria, et cetera, because more happens than that. But it's thin, and I love this idea that there actually is going to be a narrative to help hang all of that poetry on, because I think audiences could get lost.
Yeah, I mean, there is, if you want to sit down and read through the poetry, or if your mind and heart work fast enough that you can do it in the moment and comprehend it all as it's moving forward, it's incredibly rich, and you can get an incredible. To say visual emotional story, I'm saying that even in separately and on top of the actual visual performance that you're watching. I mean, a lot of what the payador sings are these these stanzas that are incredibly descriptive pictures. It's like he's painting this like a surrealist painting in your brain by the words that he says.
Right.
And you imagine that, and they're sometimes beautiful, sometimes horrific, sometimes both at the same time, and it inspires sometimes familiar emotions, sometimes entirely unfamiliar ones, but moving from stanza to stanza, piece to piece, it almost feels like if you're just listening and taking in the words, he's creating emotional responses in you, and there's a narrative that's developing out of this emotional reaction that you have, leading to this emotional reaction you have to that emotional reaction. So you follow like that story inside of your own heart is going on, and payador is creating that. On top of that, besides that, you can do that at home, right? But you need something, or in just the concert version. If you're going to be able to do a fully staged performance, you want something also to be able to watch visually, and that's a very hard thing. I mean, how are you going to do that except for with like some sort of computer animation? It's impossible.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So being able to develop a clear, concise, and direct and emotionally thrustful story with the visual language of the tango dancers not just performing tango, but it being a central aspect of the story, Payador and Maria's relationship, and her experiences in Buenos Aires and then in the underworld.
Yeah, we don't want to give away too much.
Right. So, I mean, you can't play it without that.
It's such a rich piece, and again, it's something that from a recording and from reading the libretto and reading the poetry, I have in my mind as being one way, which would be a little unwieldy. But that's why it's a really good thing that I'm not a stage director, and why it'll be great to talk to John about. Okay, how are you putting all this together? The thing that drives it, as drives all opera, is the music. Tell us a little bit about the music and your the way it grabs you.
Right. So the interesting thing about the piece in terms of how the music functions, right? I mean, there's a symbolic. I mean, arguably, some people have the theory that Maria is tango itself, and she's a representative of that. And she is an expression of how the tango has gone through changes, and then during Piazzolla's time, him bringing in Nuevo Tango.
Right.
And that, so her experience with Buenos Aires and all of the things that she's subjected to could be the influences of the new instruments, influences of the new musical styles, and how they are breaking her down in a certain way, but she's on one level accepting of it and open to it, but also destroyed by it, and how in the end the sort of resurrection theme being the creation of her transformation into the new style of
a new
tango.
form of tango.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have that all in the music. So it's not just your traditional classic tango styles. I mean, Piazzolla is using different sorts of instruments and jazz melodies. So they don't come in and out, and there's certain leitmotifs and everything in there. So
there's even a fugue.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting.
For Crazy Bandoneon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, and it's but like regardless of all of that, it hits you at a gut level. I mean, it's like there's so much fire in the music that it's just, I mean, you're immediately grabbed by it, and you jump into that world.
That's what struck me about the very first time I listened to it. It was actually in the car, and I don't even know how I came by this recording. And I just put the CD in the CD player and started listening, and it was one of those moments where we got halfway through it and I had to stop the car.
Yeah.
I had to park and go somewhere, but I just sat there and listened to the rest. I couldn't drag myself away.
Yeah.
It's so
rhythmically atmospheric, or something like that. Right?
It
brings you to a new world. Yeah.
Right away. It's just amazing. Well, what's next for you in your career? Where are you going from here?
Another Maria de Buenos Aires, actually.
Great! Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
In Oregon, yeah, and then back to opera. I'm singing Sharpless in Butterfly in Princeton.
Well, so Maria might be a sub-cottage industry.
Right.
This is great.
It works for me. I love being in this piece. Yeah.
Terrific. Well, we love having you here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Looking forward to the performance.
Excited about it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.